Hello there. Welcome back to the booth here at Pro Tour Battle for Zendikar. Ian Duke, Marshall Sutcliffe, and we're ready to bring you, that's right, Reid Duke versus Ross Merriam here for round 7. Let's head down to the feature match area. Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Battle for Zendikar. Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Ian Duke. It is time for round 7, where we have in our feature match area one Reid Duke. Yes, there is a relation. That's your brother, Ian.
That's right.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You're a consummate professional. I know you're not going to let it taint, but it's got to be kind of cool to
It's
to have
very
your
cool.
brother
This is
down there.
my first chance to commentate at a match that he's played.
You're going to be mean to him. Let's see who his opponent is. Ross Merriam here. Take a look at Ross. I remember Ross had a top 8 at a GP last season in Dallas, and he's brought a white-green
Yep,
deck to the table here, playing up against Reid, who's on Esper Control.
that's right.
So how does the matchup break down in your mind?
Well, I mean, the white-green deck clearly is the aggressive deck. It's trying to end the game early if it can. It's got, Warden of the First Tree and Den Protector and Deathmas Raptor and Hangerback Walker and all these kind of early game creatures. So it would like to just attack and win. That's plan A. However, the Esper Control deck has got a lot of removal and sweepers and things along those lines. So it's going to try to defend itself. And then things kind of transition into the late game where green-white is trying to get Deathmas Raptor, Den Protector loops going. And that's actually a game plan that can hang with a control deck's late game plan as well. So this is a matchup that could be decided at any point in the game, really. It could be an early rush from the green-white deck, or it could be a long, grindy game that either deck could win.
Okay. Well, a good start for Ross Merriam on his route here. He's got a Warden of the First Tree at, the first level, I guess we'd call it.
Yeah, that die there, it's not a +1/+1 counter, but it's which level sort of the Warden is on, meaning it's a 3/3 right now.
Yeah, Reid is going to allow the Hangerback Walker from Ross Merriam to resolve, but he's not done with his turn yet. He's got Anticipate here to try to kind of craft his game plan here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is he on like a bunch of Planeswalkers type deck?
No,
or what are
his
we looking
version's
at?
quite different from the one we saw last round. Last round's Esper Control deck, so to speak, was kind of like a more mid-rangey Planeswalker deck. Reid's deck is more of what I would call a traditional control deck. He's got, of course, he has Jace, because he's a blue deck, and Jace is awesome. But he also has, a bunch of removal spells, card selection, dig through time, anticipate, and counter spells as well. So unlike the deck we saw last round, Reid has quite a few counter spells. Ross Merriam's deck, on the other hand, it's more or less what you'd expect from a traditional green-white Megamorph deck. One kind of spicy thing that he has added to the deck here is Avatar of the Resolute.
Oh, the 3/2?
Yeah, this is a 3/2 card that comes with a +1/+1 counter for each other creature you have with a +1/+1 counter. So that's, capable of some pretty cool starts with things like Hangerback Walker and other cards, also the Megamorph cards when they turn up to get +1/+1 counters. So it's also just a good beatdown creature, like 3 power for 2 mana.
Yeah,
It's
even on
perfectly
turn
fine.
2, rumbles nicely. Interesting, on Reid's side, a card hasn't seen a lot of play in Standard yet. It's Mage Ring Network there for Reid.
Yeah, this is a card. I think we heard Adrian Sullivan talk about it a little bit earlier. It is a very reasonable inclusion in a control deck. It's a class of lands we call storage lands. They were popular during Time Spiral block, I think was the last time we saw them. And they let you just spend your mana effectively, especially in these counterspell control decks. You can leave up counter magic, and if your opponent does something you want to counter, great. If not, then you just charge up your land. And it may seem slow, but getting an extra 2 or 3 mana burst in the mid or late game can be what you need to cast something powerful like a Dig Through Time or an Ugin, or maybe counter 2 spells in 1 turn.
Now, the first counter
How many cards do you have?
doesn't really do much for you here, right?
That's right. Yeah, you need more than
It's
one counter.
it's the second one that actually starts netting you, where you can tap your land for 2 mana or more.
Yep.
And Reid did take, by the way, end step there to put a counter on it. He's played his 4th land here.
Gain 3 life.
So Reid under a decent amount of pressure here, but here comes Erishin Cleric.
Game 1.
Game 1. Yeah, this is not a sideboard card. I mean, it is typically a sideboard card in most decks, but it is not a sideboard card for Reid.
Interesting stuff. How many of those is Reid running? Like, is that a key part of his plan, or is it just
I
kind of...
don't know if it's a key part of his plan, but one note is that Ojutai's Command is a really popular card this
Of
tournament,
course.
and it's just another value target with Ojutai Command.
Okay.
So in addition to being able to get Jace back and gain life and counter creatures, you could also gain a bunch of life and bring back an Erishan Cleric against a red deck.
Well, this little Erishan Cleric is going to have to do a heck of a lot of work here if Reid's going to find his way out of this game. Is he building up towards some type of wrath? Is that what we're seeing here?
I hope that's what he's planning to do. He's got a lot of work if he wants to answer these creatures with 1-for-1 removal spells, with Hangerback Walker, and he'll probably have to fight through Den Protectors at some point. So I think at some point in this game he's going to want to do some sort of wrath effect.
All right, well, there's 4 more damage hitting Reid Duke, dropping him down to 10 as he does chump here.
Add a card on Hangerback? Sure.
And Ross isn't going to add anything else to the board. I mean, he can certainly sense that as 5 mana approaches for Reid Duke, that his board is very much in danger.
Now, Ross and Reid are good friends. They've played Magic a lot together, sort of up in the northeast New England type area at Star City Opens and things along those lines. So, they both know each other well. They know each other's play style. I'm sure Ross has an idea of what types of cards Reid likes to play, and, maybe you can get some reads on his mannerisms and things like that.
And of course, the same is reversed.
The same is reversed, yes, for sure. And I'm sure both players knowing at this point that Reid is planning some kind of wrath effect, and that's why Ross is just kind of holding back and ticking up his Hangerback Walker, preparing for the reset as best as he can. But we'll take a look at Reid's hand. Looks like he does have a copy of Planar Outburst. This, of course, is a new Wrath variant. When we say Wrath, we mean it's a creature sweeper, symmetric creature sweeper, like the old Wrath of God. This is the new version from Battle for Zendikar that has Awaken. So it's kind of both a creature sweeper and late game can be a win condition also.
Yeah, unfortunately for Reid, I don't think he's going to get to the Awaken portion with this particular copy.
Not this particular one.
But there's more.
Yep.
So this is clearly a huge turn in the game here as Reid Duke is attempting to sweep away the board, leaving just the 3 Thopter tokens for Ross Merriam.
And Reid has at least 2 immediate worries. One is the Hangerback Walker, which is going to make some tokens, and the other is he has to be thinking about Valorous Stance, and it does look like Ross has a copy of Valorous Stance here to protect his Avatar, the Resolute.
Now that doesn't quite give Ross lethal here, right?
Right, he'll
7
need some
mana
other kind of
or
boost.
7 damage, yeah. But if he's going to win the game on his turn, remember the shields are down for Reid Duke. He is going to need some way to punch through an extra couple of damage here.
More cards in hand? Yep.
Ross looking low on cards. If our hand viewer is correct there, he's just sitting on a couple lands.
Still, he's putting enough pressure on Reid even without a way to kill him this turn.
Yeah, something like a Gideon off the top could really diversify his threats in a way that Reid would be hard-pressed to answer. Even so, Reid is going to have to likely follow up with another sweeper this following turn.
Yeah.
Or something along the lines of a 6 untapped land with Ojutai's Command, bringing back Erishan Cleric, maybe chump blocking the Avatar the Resolute, I think could keep him alive for another turn, but somewhere in the game plan there's going to be a board reset number 2.
It has to happen here. Reid Duke fires off a fetch land going down to 1. You can see he's having a good time. Him and Ross have been kind of, jabbing at each other a little here and there throughout the match. You could, like you mentioned, they're good friends.
So Reid with a couple of digs through time. One of these delved all the way could still find an Ojutai's Command, which could bring back Erishan Cleric. That gains 7 life, puts him up to 8, and then he can block the Avatar the Resolute. So I imagine that's the game plan for this turn. And if the dig through time or his next draw step can find another sweeper, like a second planar outburst, for example,
then he will have turned the corner.
then we'll see the game continue from there. But one step at a time, I suppose.
See if what he finds here. This is huge.
I think I see an Ojutai's command.
You got a better angle than we do.
Second from the right. So I think one was a command. I didn't see what the other card was, but
Well, part A.
yes. Step one toward the path of making this a game.
Yeah, the whole not dying thing. And he's
Nope,
just dead.
that's
So
it.
the
Okay.
problem, of course, being that the Erishan Cleric got exiled there.
Oh, it did.
Yeah.
Oh, from the dig through time.
Yeah,
Yep,
he needed
that
to
was the
use
part I was
every
missing.
single bit of it.
Yep.
And that is going to do it. Ross Merriam takes game 1 from Reid Duke here in round 7. We will be back right after these messages. Put your game to the test at a Grand Prix. These open tournaments feature the best players in your region as well as top Magic pros. Upcoming Grand Prix include Beijing, Quebec City, Porto Alegre, Lyon, and Indianapolis. Visit magic.wizards.com/Grand Prix for a complete schedule. Start on your road to the Pro Tour by playing in a preliminary Pro Tour qualifier. With more than 2,000 locations running events, you're sure to find one near you. Visit magic.wizards.com/PPTQ for schedules and information. And welcome back to the feature match area here in Milwaukee. Welcome to the Shuffle Cam. All right, this is good. I wanted to ask you something anyway, Ian. You know, it's not every day that we have a situation like this where we've got you in the booth and we've got your brother down in the feature match area, Reid Duke. Did you teach him how to play?
I did.
Back in the day when you guys were young?
Back in the day. Well, we sort of taught ourselves together from the old Magic rulebook. I think we got Magic starter decks for Christmas. I got an Ice Age one. He got a 4th edition one, I think. And we just kind of read the rule book and tried to figure out how to play. And we made a lot of mistakes. I think the first time I cast a Zephyr Falcon against Reid, of course, is a 1/1 flyer that doesn't tap to attack. I was just like, well, I'll attack you 20 times. You're dead. And poor 5-year-old Reid, he didn't put up a fight. He just died right there. But, you know, as we played together, we kind of ping-ponged off each other and learned more and more about the game and started going to local tournaments. And, you know, eventually we kind of worked our way up. And
that's awesome.
yeah, it's great.
All right, let's take a look at what's going on over on our King of the Hill match, where we have Guillermo Merjam, and he's up against Matt Sperling, who won last round to seize the King of the Hill table with his Esper Control deck. And he's under pressure again. This is back-to-back rounds here for Sperling, where he's facing this Atarka red deck.
And there's a copy of Despise in Matt Sperling's graveyard, a card he said has done a ton of work for him against these Atarka red decks because of the dash mechanic specifically. Often, you know, a dash creature will get in some damage and then bounce back to hand and then just makes itself vulnerable to Despise afterwards. Of course, it looks like this Lightning Berserker was hardcast, so it's on the table.
One of the 2 Atarka's commands in hand for Merjam hits the bin to a duress here. But Sperling finds himself in a tricky spot here. He's already down a game, by the way. So he doesn't have much wiggle room here if he's going to stay undefeated at 7-0 after this round. He's currently 6-0, but so is Guillermo Merjam, and looking to be a little bit ahead here at least.
2 cards, right? Yeah.
So 2 mana up could mean a lot of different things from Sperling. Could mean counter magic like Negate, or Clash of Wills. Could mean Ultimate Price, which is a card that's fallen in popularity a lot, but is extremely good against these Atarka red decks.
Right. Yeah, one of the best answers you can have.
Yeah, one of the few instant speed, sort of cheap removal spells. But here comes Flamewake Phoenix.
Yeah, the damage is starting to pile up here. Sperling's down to 13. Couple of nice threats on board for Merjam. He's already forcing Matt to do something.
Looks like a Silk Wrap maybe coming down?
Yeah, you're right. Prairie Stream's going to hit the battlefield tapped because he only controls 1 basic.
Yeah. Take it. Sure.
All right, looks like this one's going to kind of develop as it goes. I actually want to jump back to the main match. I want to see what happens post-sideboard, because my assumption here is that this is where Reid is supposed to kind of outpace a deck like the green-white deck from Ross Merriam, where he has more sideboard options, can really tune his deck to the matchup.
Yeah, one would usually think so. For control decks, they tend to get better post-sideboard, although I was chatting with Reid last night, and he said he likes his deck a lot. He likes it game one against most decks, but he actually feels that most matchups get worse for him after sideboard.
Oh,
He thinks
weird.
his opponents are better able to tune their deck against his after sideboard.
Well, that is strange, isn't it?
It's a little bit surprising. I'm not sure exactly why he thinks that way. I didn't know what cards were in his deck at the time when I was talking to him, so I didn't really get the full details, but I'm interested to hear his explanation of that later on. I could definitely see it out of these green-white Megamorph decks, though, that they can kind of tune themselves to be a little bit more anti-control, maybe a little bit grindier, to play a longer game. But this game's shaping up a lot different than the first one was. Reid on the board early with a Jace, Vryn's Prodigy, and Ross Merriam looking to be kind of a step behind here, sort of asking, may I, with this Avatar the Resolute, and only a Hangerback Walker to threaten Reid. So if Reid has a counterspell here, he could untap into great shape. I think an illustration of how much play versus draw matters here, but also just how much a Jace on turn 2 matters for these control decks.
Absolutely. Especially, look how things are going here. That's 3 cards in the graveyard already for Reid. He hasn't even taken his draw step for the turn yet. He might even have, an Anticipate or something like that to get Jace fully charged up here.
Mm-hmm.
Anticipate.
He does.
Add a card under Hangerback in response. That's
Sure.
fine.
Wow.
Avatar the Resolute looking pretty good in these games.
Yeah, surprisingly.
I mean, this curve out actually looks really nice. Turn 2 Hangerback, turn 3, 3 untapped lands. Avatar comes down as a 4/3, and the Hangerback gets to charge up. That's really efficient use of mana.
He has 7 power right now,
Yeah.
and it's ready to attack on his 4th turn.
Yeah, so actually transforming Jace is gets to be a little bit dangerous here. I think he'd probably be safe for a turn, but eventually we get chipped down from these attackers.
Yeah, we may also see Reid do that trick where he blocks and then transforms Jace.
Yeah, I think we
know.
probably will, because plus wanting the Jace here
Activate.
in his main phase, we'll end up with the Jace probably on lower loyalty, I think, than doing the block trick. But it looks like he opts to loot in his main phase. Presumably has a plan.
Yeah, he could be looking for something specific.
I think the trouble for Reid is that
Transform.
the threats out of this green-white deck are so resilient. I mean, Hangerback Walkers, Den Protectors, Deathmiss Raptors, that it's kind of hard for him to keep up just by using 1-for-1 removal and sweepers. I think he's really going to want to see cards like Utter End in this matchup, just to kind of permanently get rid of these threats without them getting value.
Good.
Oh, there's a Fathom
Ooh.
Feeder for Reid here.
Yeah.
I like that.
Just chatting with Reid actually before this match, he said he added this card to his sideboard at the recommendation of our mutual friend Andy Boswell, who's also a Magic player that's been having some success recently.
This card's cool.
It's
This
very
is one of
cool.
my favorite cards from the set, by the way.
Oh, thanks. I
Yeah.
designed it.
I love that card.
It's reminiscent of a card Azure
You
Mage.
made it?
Yeah.
Oh,
That we
thank
saw.
you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That we saw quite a few seasons ago. M11, I want to say. That it maybe didn't. It was a 1U 2/1 that had 3U draw card.
Yeah.
And we saw people sideboard these in control mirror matches, or sometimes actually just against red decks to block. And this card's really similar here in its functionality. Just a nice early blocker. It can take out big green creatures. And if the game goes long, it's a draw engine too. It's not an efficient one, but it can get you a little bit of value.
You are speaking my language. Yeah, I love that card. Oh, here's a nice sideboard card for Ross Merriam as well. Evolutionary Leap.
Yeah, this card is a nightmare for control decks. I've played a lot of control matchups against Evolutionary Leap, and it is not a card you want to see resolve.
So how does it normally go? Like, how does it normally play out? Reid has some type of plan with sweepers or removal. What happens on the other side?
Usually it just sits there threatening to be activated, basically. So if you're the control player, whenever you point a removal spell at one of the green deck's creatures, it just turns into another creature, and that keeps going and going and going until you're finally grinded out. And it's particularly effective with cards like Hangerback Walker, where, I mean, that Hangerback Walker, just as the board sits right now, could add a counter and turn into 3 more creatures, each of which turns into another creature. So that Hangerback Walker represents like 5 more creatures off the Evolutionary Leap. Of course, that's slow, but you know, if the game goes long, as it will in a control matchup, it's a lot of card advantage.
I'll add a counter in response. Sure. That's just good. You're at 17.
Yeah, this is where I start wondering if Reid has, you know, cards like Ugin. You mentioned Utter End, you know, things to get rid of cards like Evolutionary Leap and maybe even a bunch of the creatures all in one fell swoop.
So we got a picture of Reid's hand here. He has another land on his way up to the Ugin that you mentioned there, which of course doesn't answer Hangerback Walker, but if he can answer it along the way, can sweep the rest of the board, which is great, and Ojutai's command to buy him some time.
So this is a dig through time now for Reid Duke. Another interesting question that happens here as well is, since Reid does have Ojutai's command in his hand already, that means that if his Jace were to die, he could get it back. But does Ross dedicate resources to killing Jace?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think he sort of has to. I think that the Jace just remaining in play, flashing back spells, shrinking creatures is just going to be too much of a long-term advantage for Reid. So I think step 1 is going to be for Ross to try to take out the Jace and just kind of settle into a grindier game with the Evolutionary Leap. And this is kind of a great game to watch because both decks are succeeding in their own game plans. And kind of, they both have the game going the way they want it to go. And it's unclear actually who's going to have the advantage going long. So here comes the Hangerback Walker does get sacrificed, making some Thopters. And this makes Ross a little bit more vulnerable to, say, a planar outburst next turn. But it does kind of get things moving for him. And I don't know, maybe he was feeling a little bit stuck on mana or stuck on things to do and just wants to, you know, pick up a creature he can cast. And he does pick up Nissa, which can fetch him a land, which can make sure he keeps hitting his land drops, which then makes sure his Evolutionary Leap keeps going. So it's kind of just this card advantage cycle that'll let him grind out a longer game.
You know, it's funny to see how much things have changed as well, just from like a big picture colors perspective, because, you know, it wasn't even that long ago that if you told me I was playing blue-black or blue-black-white control and I was going to play against a green-white player, I probably would have been pretty excited about that. Like,
yes, definitely.
Those are all the kind of big, dumb creatures. You could just, dice to Doomblade, whatever, not worried about it. And now it's like everything comes back, becomes a planeswalker, turns into a bunch of flyers. Like, you can have a worse board state after casting a sweeper than you did before.
Yep.
They've got these cool, you know, enchantments like Evolutionary Leap to keep things flowing. It's just like, this is no longer a fun matchup for these control decks.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the characteristics of the past year or so of Standard is that decks don't really run out of gas. Like, you know, we're used to like, okay, green-white creature deck, you play at a few creatures, you get Wrath, and then you just have nothing to do.
Yeah.
But we're seeing decks of all colors, color combinations, just continuing to have things to do throughout the game, and often these games go 10, 11, 12 plus turns, and both players still have full hands and are still presenting threats and answers to each other. And I think that's pretty interesting magic, honestly.
All Jace.
Yeah, and your prediction was correct here as well, Ian. That Ross is prioritizing getting Jace gone and settling into that longer game plan. But Reid has some pretty big stuff at the top of his curve here.
Block. I have no effects. Me either. Jace dies.
So down goes Jace.
But like we mentioned, this could turn out pretty well for Reid here.
Yeah, it looks like Reid does have a copy of Planar Outburst in his hand. And
an Ojutai's command or no?
I don't think so.
He already used that. All right.
Yeah.
Pass.
By the way, Ojutai's command Fathom Feeder. It's kind of cool.
Oh, yeah, that is very cool.
Turns it into a removal spell.
Yep.
Fetch 15.
By the way, I just figured out which deck I'm building on Magic Online after the PT.
Blue-black aristocrats.
No, not this time. No, I want to be like Reader Rabbit here. Of course, that was Reid's screen name before we knew him as the Reid Duke, the professional full-time Magic player. He was a kind of a Magic Online star. That's how we broke in.
Go ahead.
All right, so that is land number 7.
Attack you for 3. 12.
So Reid just sort of being patient here. He has a planar outburst, but he knows if he casts it, Ross is just going to pick up 3 more creatures off of Evolutionary Leap. So they're in this kind of weird,
Hang back phone.
kind of equilibrium type state here, where
This
Reid's
is
just
so
taking 3
awkward
damage
for
each turn.
Reid, too.
Yeah, it's very awkward. But this looks like a scatter to the winds.
He has to respect the Hangerback Walker because his sweepers turns it into another creature, which doesn't solve his problem, and also they're colorless.
Yeah. I think Reid's plan here is to get up to Ugin and actually play the Ugin first and just take care of Evolutionary Leap.
Just -2.
And then afterwards, he can think about a planar outburst.
Okay. Yeah, the colorless, the fact that these Thopters and Hangerbacks are colorless is really annoying from Reid's perspective.
5.
And note that Reid chose not to awaken with Scatter to the Winds, even though he could have. I
Yeah.
think just not wanting to make one of his lands vulnerable. Each land he has is so precious to him right now, and he's trying to get up to Ugin, that he doesn't care about having a random 3/3, especially. Well, actually, it wouldn't die to either his Ugin or his planar outburst, so that's a nice little synergy there. But I think it's just not worth him
14.
leaving a land vulnerable at this stage of the game.
Yeah, I think it makes a 4/4 too, right? Not that it changes your.
yeah,
point,
that may
but
be true.
I believe it is 4. But yeah, the problem, of course, is that it wouldn't even block anything at this point, right? He's just getting hit in the air anyway.
So I like Reid's attack with the man land here. He's just kind of saying, like, if your plan is to just sit there and play nothing and hit me with 3 Thopters every turn, well, I'll hit you back for 2 and gain 2 life. And we can keep doing this as long as you want, and eventually you're going to have to commit something to the board.
I love that. It just puts the ball back in Ross Merriam's court, right? It
Yeah,
says, hey, you
and
do
sure
this.
enough, we see Ross playing a morph here, a Megamorph.
Flash Wills for 3.
And
Yep. So you can go.
a clash of wills here for Reid. Also could explain why he didn't want to tap out earlier. If he had that clash in his hand to try to counter some follow-up play.
Yeah, I think he just picked that up the last turn,
Oh, okay.
but I'm not totally sure.
Fair enough.
And this turn, it looks like he picked up an Ojutai's Command, so this could get back a Fathom Feeder and start putting pressure on Ross in the form of drawing cards, maybe.
Attack for 3.
Yeah, this is this is really fascinating here, Ian, because you were mentioning earlier how things have changed in Standard, and how these decks can now rumble. But you know what? In the really late game, I still like the Esper Control deck.
Yeah.
I think that like if he pushes that envelope too far, you'll find that this green-white Megamorph deck just isn't set up as well as Reid is to use all the mana that he can get to keep hitting these land drops. I mean, look at the mana situation here. Ross is on 5.
Yeah, and Ojutai's Command really showing its strength here. Counters
Whew.
a Hangerback Walker, brings back Jace. Now Ross is hard-pressed to deal with Jace, and advance his own game plan at the same time. And I think the real heavy hitter is Reid is still sitting on an Ugin, and frankly, I don't know of many commonly played ways that these green-white decks have to deal with Ugin once he's on the
It's
battlefield.
just creatures, right? They just have to.
I think, yeah, they're mainly relying on attacking. So if an Ugin sticks at high loyalty and sweeps the board, that's really hard to come back from for the green-white deck.
So here's Reid Duke activating Jace Friend's Prodigy.
He's got some options here.
Tacitor, or excuse me, Murderous
Murderous
Cut.
Cut, yeah. So flashing back a removal spell on a Thopter, not particularly effective, especially with Evolutionary Leap. Maybe we'll see just a tick up, just kind of setting things up for a big Ugin turn. Of note, he could also get back Ojutai's Command and then get back Fathom Feeder, and then he has a card draw engine. So he's got a lot of options here. Frankly, I don't know what I would do in this situation. So
Yeah,
I'll
we're
just
getting
defer.
into that kind of deep late game plan type stuff here. And I do find it interesting. I mean, look at Ross Merriam's hand. He's got 5 cards in his hand.
Yeah.
all spells. I mean, he's got business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and Reid knows there's some powerful cards there. You know, things like Den Protectors, things like Gideon. So he just wants to make sure that he doesn't leave himself vulnerable to something huge hitting the battlefield.
Frankly, he's not under that much heat right now.
Mm-hmm. I like the way both players have been playing this match. Ross very careful here, just maximizing the potential value out of the evolutionary leap, making sure not to commit too much into a sweeper. Warden of the first tree is great here because he can just wait and spend his mana end of turn to kind of gradually level that up. And it's normally kind of a mana inefficient card, but the way the game's playing out, it looks like he has plenty of time to kind of keep leveling it up. Although here comes dig through time for Reid.
This is what I was talking about a couple of minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the late game now, and look at the two spells that were just cast that turn.
Also charge my
Right, one of them was a 1/1 that can get bigger. You know, and I'm not trying to disrespect the card. I think Warden's a very good card, but here we are in turn 14 or whatever, and Reid is casting dig through time.
Utter end.
Yeah, there goes Utter End for evolutionary leap.
So the pressure is now on Ross. He's got to figure out, well, how do I want to use this? Do I want to use this?
Yep.
No, he just lets it go. So Reid found an interesting line there. Did not have to use his Ugin to take out the evolutionary leap, which also means that Jace is more likely to live.
Mm-hmm.
Does he have two Ugins in hand?
Yeah, it looks like he does.
Pair of Ugins.
Planner out first.
And he's just going to clear the way now that he's gotten the evolutionary leap out of the way. It looks like one creature is going to get saved by Valorous Stance.
So yeah, this is the resolution of the line of play I think that we talked about, way back when early in the game, that his game plan was just to kind of stall out, answer the evolutionary leap first, and then sweep the board.
Yes.
And then set up for an Ugin afterwards. And I think we're seeing that enacted now. Now this game is, it's hardly over now because Ross has been saving up so many cards in hand. He can just deploy a bunch of threats. And of course, he still has that recursive kind of Den Protector, Deathmiss Raptor engine for later on in the game, should it come to that.
Got a couple of updates from our side tables as well. Guillermo Merjam defeats Matt Sperling to take the King of the Hill table, and Paulo Vitor Damaderosa stays undefeated, defeating Yuta Takahashi on our back table. As we come here, Ross Merriam took game one in impressive fashion, but Reid Duke is fighting back and looks to be in good position, at least currently, here in game two against Ross.
Hang her back for 2. Okay. You can go.
Now, how annoying is that hanger back walker for Reid? Is that a big deal for him at this point?
It's definitely annoying. Ugin, just as a reminder for everyone, its minus X ability doesn't affect colorless permanents. So it can't get rid of Hangerback Walker or the Thopters that come out. And it's pretty wise of Ross to commit that as his threat here, just to make sure that he has something on board in case Ugin comes down.
Now, the problem here, though, of course, is that Hangerback Walker, for as good as it is, it doesn't pack a lot of a punch, right?
Yeah,
like
that's
right
true.
now it's a 2/2.
It is a slow building threat for sure.
Yeah, and Ugin, I think, is just so over the top at this point that I don't even think Reid's that concerned about the Hangerback Walker.
Yeah, and I don't know how much Ross has in his deck to answer this Ugin. I mean, there are cards that can do it, things like Quarantine Field and so on and so forth, but Reid even has a backup Ugin too, just in case something happens to this one.
Sure.
So I think Ross's best plan is probably just to keep gradually pacing out threats and making Reid keep minusing the Ugin rather than plussing it up. So things that he can play that don't die to the plus sort of Ghostfire ability that Ugin has the 3 damage.
Okay.
So I like Gideon here for that reason. If Reid wants to get rid of it, he has to -4, and then maybe another Gideon comes down, and we're kind of just gradually wearing away that Ugin.
Also, he would lose his own Jace in that scenario.
Yes, good point.
Gain control of Gideon.
Wow. How was that for a draw step for Reid?
That's huge.
And he immediately ultimates it to make an emblem. That way he knows it's not coming back over to Ross's side.
Oh, yeah, it's a really interesting play.
Plus on your hanger back walker.
Heard a couple writers talk about that recently. You steal Gideon and just immediately ultimate. That way, even if Dragonlord Silumgar dies, Gideon doesn't go back to its owner.
That's right. It's the safest play. It will also increase the clock for Reid Duke, though. I'm not sure that's the main issue with it. That's pretty sweet, though.
Yeah. Although, speaking of clock, that game did take quite a while.
It did.
And
Ross has seen enough.
Yeah.
He knows that he's way too far behind. And, it's interesting because he played Reid's game. He said, all right, let's grind. Right? Like, I got my enchantment. I've got some hard to deal with threats. Let's go for the late game. And Reid was like, come on in. Have a cup of coffee, make yourself comfortable, and welcome to Ugin's house. and that about did it.
Yeah, and I don't know. I like the way Ross played for most of that game. He was stuck on 5 lands for quite a while, so he didn't really have the option to commit more than 1 additional threat per turn and still hold up Evolutionary Leap. So I didn't see a lot else he could have done there. I mean, maybe there were turns where he could have been a little bit more aggressive with what he committed to the board. But yeah, I think he just kind of was stuck a little bit with his plays there and played it the best he could and really leveraged the potential value of that Evolutionary Leap kind of as much as he could as a threat. But it just didn't quite pan out for him the way the cards were drawn.
Yeah, and like you said, he did get stuck on mana if you look at the end there. I mean, Ross has 5 or 6 and Reid had like 10.
Yeah.
And like we said earlier, Reid really, his deck is well suited to take advantage of having 8 lands, 9 lands, 10 lands, and really making a big impact with those lands where Merriam's deck isn't quite as well suited for it.
And we didn't see it happen that game, but imagine Reid had a majoring network very early in that game. All those turns where the players were kind of taking it slow, taking it easy, Reid could have been charging up that majoring network. And that's just kind of to highlight. You see a card like that and you wonder, like, why is this card in the deck, or why haven't we seen this before in Standard? And that's a perfect example of a game where it would have been really powerful had he drawn it a little bit early in the game.
All right, so we get an exciting game 3 here to decide the match. Now, both of these players have 1 loss in the tournament. They're both at 5-1. But a great start to their Pro Tour for both Ross and Reid, keeping that pristine record going high on the list for both players. So let's see who can do it. Looks like we're underway already. Reid is in the middle of fetching here, but you notice this sometimes with players that are friends. They'll just tell you, I'm going to go get this land. Go ahead. And you don't want to get too far out of sync, but it does help just trim down a little bit of the shuffling time for the players. They've got somewhere around the 12-minute mark left. So they are going to need to play at a relatively brisk pace to make sure that they can finish, but shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, and especially at the Pro Tour level, players recognize that a draw is a bad outcome for both of them. Of course, a draw giving each player 1 point is a total sum of 2 points, whether a win and a loss is 3 and 0. So it's sort of better, it's kind of like a prisoner's dilemma thing. Like it's better for both of us as a whole if one of us wins and one of us loses than if we draw. So especially these being friendly players, you're going to see them definitely try to make sure the game concludes in time.
Okay, good start here for Merriam. Just getting in there for 3.
Eternal activate. Yep. Still passing priority. Yep.
Reid plays very crisp Magic. He, again, having come up on Magic Online, he's very familiar with that 4th edition rules book you were telling us about earlier has been left in the dust, and he's got a great grasp of the mechanics and rules of the game. I mean, most pro players do, but Reid is particularly exceptional at knowing each little thing. Hey, there's an ultimate price. It's not going to work, though, at least not at the moment.
So I'm going to let the Clash of Wills resolve.
It looks like he clashed the Valorous stance.
Block.
Right, and Reid thinking a little bit how he wants to sequence, whether he wants to flip Jace this turn or not. He could have actually looted in between the 2 spells resolving, so it would only the discard will only be the 4th card in the graveyard, but he does decide he wants to do it in this order, get the block, and transform Jace as quickly as possible.
So this saves him two damage.
Yep.
Hey, every damage point matters in these things. But you know what else matters? Every land drop.
Yeah, we saw Ross Merriam missed his 3rd land drop last turn, but does come up with it this turn with a Windswept Heath off the top. So we can add a Deathmiss Raptor to the board. Ooh, but there's
wow, this is brutal.
Ojutai's command, yeah. Ojutai's command has been very impressive this match so far.
It really has. Here he counters and draws a card. Earlier he was getting back, effectively getting back Planeswalkers at instant speed.
Mm-hmm.
He can use it to cushion his life total if he gets off to a really slow start. And things are looking very good for Reid Duke here as he's out to 6 lands. He's got an active Jace on the battlefield, shrinking down the only threat on the other side of the table right now.
We do see another land for Ross and a morph creature. I think it was a Den Protector.
It was a Den Protector. This is a risky business, though. Ross having missed land drops here means that he doesn't have the luxury of waiting another turn and hoping to hit another untapped land. So he has to just run his Den Protector out there without the ability to turn it face up.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
I do
He can't
too.
afford to not play anything this turn.
It's just tough, if he gets swept here or if something goes away. Is this dig through time now for Reid?
Wow.
Holy smokes, he is firing on all cylinders at this point. He's got more mana, he's got more cards, he's roughly ahead on board.
Counter your morph and draw a card.
Oh, so that was in response to the morph.
Yeah, you're okay.
That was all
Gonna
in
crack
response.
This, get a Canopy Vista, add a 3rd counter, and you can go. I'm in.
Yeah, the players getting a little ahead of the board state here, but they're doing it so to make sure that they can finish the match. As you said, it's in both of their best interests to do so.
Yep.
But it did make the timing a little weird. But yes, that was all in response to the morph.
And you did know, Marshall, that things seem to go, according to plan for Reid here. He's drawing a lot of cards and kind of filtering through his deck and getting what he needs. But we do see in Ross Merriam's hand, he does have that evolutionary leap.
Okay.
With a Hangerback Walker at 3. So that represents a lot of potential card advantage. And he also has a Quarantine Field in hand, which is a card we talked about last game that is an answer to Ugin. So if the game plays out similarly to the way it did last time, Ross could stick in that evolutionary leap, start grinding out some card advantage, and then he has the answer to Ugin for later on in the game.
All right, yeah, this is actually getting interesting because I think Ross just drew his 5th land, and I believe he's also got... All right, he's going to just lead off with the evolutionary leap, but he's also got another Den Protector. Oh, this is huge, though, for Reid. Utter End takes out Hangerback Walker and shuts off that flow of cards. Now, a smaller Hangerback Walker, still not bad here for Merriam, but the one with 3 counters on it, before getting the leap down was a pretty big game.
15.
Players are playing very crisply now, as you can see.
Yep, and we'll probably see, if not this turn, in the near future, a flashback Utter End on that evolutionary leap, probably.
3 damage.
Or just that guy.
He's going to take out the planar... How about Ugin?
I get a copter. Yep.
So Reid choosing not to -2 there to get rid of the evolutionary leap because it would also get rid of his Jace.
+1 on your Thopter. Yep. Your turn.
So
Plus
just
a single threat from Merriam means that Jace just gets to nullify it effectively.
yeah, allowing Ross to have that card advantage outlet just because Reid seems to be so far ahead with these Planeswalkers.
And that is one of the things about Evolutionary Leap that's tough is that it goes in your hand, right? Like,
Yeah.
you do get to cash in things that were going to die anyway, but ultimately you start falling behind. Now, here's a big play from Ross Merriam. Quarantine Field. It's going to take down 2 Planeswalkers at once.
That is huge. So what Reid really wants to set up here is a Utter End on the Quarantine Field, and he has a
Yes.
Jace to start along that path. If this Jace survives a turn, next turn it can flip and Utter End and get back those 2.
Wow, that
2
would be
cards.
huge.
2 cards. Yep.
But we'll see what Ross has access to.
14.
We haven't seen any Dromica's commands out of Ross's deck so far, which is a card that could deal with Jace. I wonder if he sideboarded them out. I think it would be totally
I
reasonable.
wouldn't be surprised, yeah.
To sideboard at least some number of them out.
So Ross, though, is moving things forward. He just played a Den Protector face down. Remember, he's got a Deathmiss Raptor in his yard as well. He's also got another Den Protector down there, and we've seen that loop happen multiple times in the past, call it a year or so.
You can go 1.
But if Reid can set this up and get that quarantine field out of here. It's going to be hard to imagine that Ross is going to be able to overcome that without a lot of work. Remember, the Utter End's going to exile the quarantine field, so the Den Protector can't just get it back again.
Draw. Activate. If you have Utter End flashback, Utter End your quarantine fields.
Yeah, he's doing our job for us now. So that whole line comes together cleanly here for Reid Duke and gives him a Planeswalker and a Jace, but he's already got another Jace as well, so he's not going to activate that one. Yeah, that works. That's business. What is Ugin going to do? Take down...
Do 3 damage to your morph.
To your morph, which will just prompt it to flip up. But still, it's a reasonable threat that Reid would like to get rid of.
Yeah, and what this does is, assuming it's a Den Protector, which we know it is, and it turns face up, it'll bring back the Deathmiss Raptor. And I think what Reid is hoping to do is catch that Deathmiss Raptor face up with Ugin and be able to finally just exile it from the game once and for all.
Point.
Although that is tough to do with Evolutionary Leap on the battlefield, and
yeah, that's true.
And also option to return the Deathmiss Raptor face down.
Returning Deathmiss and with the trigger, and then target with Den Protector. I will get back.
Den Protector?
So this is a much closer game than it looked like it might be.
Absolutely.
Like 2 turns ago. So Ross's engines are really starting to come online, and Reid's Planeswalkers are kind of in an awkward position here with not quite being able to do the job against what Ross Merriam has on the battlefield.
So Ross did get back the other Den Protector with his first Den Protector, and of course the Deathmiss Raptor came back as well. Then he sacked it to the Evolutionary Leap before the Ugin activation killed it, and he ended up getting an Avatar of the Resolute out of the deal. So like you said, this is closer than it looked.
Yeah, so Ross just is going to be careful to pace out his threats in such a way to kind of maximize how annoying they are to deal with. We'll probably see the face-down Den Protector and then leaving mana up for Evolutionary Leap and so on. And I think what Reid is going to want to do on his turn is probably flip his Jace and maybe target the Ojutai's command in his graveyard, then use Ugin to exile the Deathmiss Raptor and Evolutionary Leap, and then probably afterwards Ojutai's command and bring back a Jace. That's one line of play there. We also do see...
they'll get exiled too, though, right? Does he have another one in his yard?
The one that Legend rules from that's currently in Planeswalker form will go to the graveyard first. So there's ways, there's ways he can kind of end up with a Jace and an Ugin in play after all this and get some value. But we also do see Reid has Dragonlord Silumgar in his hand. Oh. So it's possible he tries to do a play with that, although with Evolutionary Leap on the battlefield under Ross's control, he's not really going to be able to steal a creature. So I think first order of business is deal with the Evolutionary Leap.
3 minutes left on the match, by the way. And you can sense it down there. The players are playing quickly. They have been for this whole game.
So it looks like Reid's going for my line there. Legend ruling his own Jace, or Planeswalker ruling it, I should say. Minusing Ugin.
You really did teach him how to play, didn't you?
We have that
he thinks just
sibling
like you.
Telepathy, I guess, going on. I don't know.
Crazy.
Twitch chat is probably screaming, rigged or whatever in chat right now.
I doubt that.
But no, we're just thinking along the same lines. So he does go with the exile -3 on Ugin and perhaps bringing back... Oh, he went for the dig through time rather than the Ojutai's command, which is totally reasonable.
Okay, well, that explains it. So there's another Jace to hit the battlefield from his hand here and a Fathom Feeder as well, and he has successfully whittled down Ross Merriam's board to just a thought.
Pickup from Ross Merriam here. Gideon off the top. This Gideon could emblem and allow Thopter to kill Ugin.
Oh, wow.
It's a little bit of a risky play because Reid could have like a murderous cut or something in his hand from Ross's perspective, and I believe he actually does, looking at my hand viewer here on my monitor. So we'll see if he goes for the emblem play, or no, it looks like he just goes a little bit more conservative and just makes a knight.
This is not going to work out well for Ross, though, right? Because Reid still has Dragonlord Silumgar in his hand. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Uh-oh. We saw this last game. He stole Gideon and just immediately made an emblem.
You can go.
Just effectively killing Gideon for some extra value. The clock is ticking, though.
Yep.
Like, the emblem might actually matter here, by the way.
I think it will.
Yeah.
I mean,
They've got a minute left on the clock.
Ugin plus 4 power Silumgar is a pretty fast clock. I mean, that's 7 per turn, so...
Okay, so that's plenty quick, even with extra turns sort of looming here.
Go.
And the thing is, we talked about how valuable Ugin is as a sweeper against the green-white deck. Also just plussing it every turn. I mean, the plus kills most threats out of the green-white deck and adds 2 loyalty to Ugin as well. So
No, you're right.
It's very hard to race.
Yeah, it's just a quick clock, too, and as we're right up against time here, it should be any second now. That is going to become a factor because it looks like Reid has turned the corner, right? I feel like if this game were to go on for 10 or 12 turns, Reid would have picked up the win in there. I'm not ready to count Ross Merriam out completely yet, though. He has shown he's got quite a bit of resilience here, but this does look like it's good for Reid Duke right now.
Mm-hmm.
The judge encouraging Ross to make a play.
That is time in the round. Active player finish your turn, then proceed with up to 5 additional turns.
All right, you guys heard it.
Counter that and draw a card.
So this is turn 0 of extra turns.
Very key
that
counter
was
on that
huge.
Den Protector that would allow Ross Merriam the sort of toolbox of his graveyard there. And I don't know exactly what he'd end up picking up, but probably a Valorous Stance to kill Dragonlord Silumgar.
There's another very annoying evolutionary
yeah.
leap.
So we may see an Ugin minus this turn. I think that would still give Reid lethal in a few turns.
He would also take out a Night token.
Yeah. Probably we'll see Ugin plus killing the Thopter, but then Ross can get 2 more Thopters next turn from Evolutionary Leap. Really tough spot in terms of ending the game within these final 5 turns.
Now, are you saying it's a tough spot for Reid to actually get that job done?
Yeah, I mean, it looks to me from this board state that Reid is the favorite to win. Of
Yes.
course, anything could happen here, especially with the Evolutionary Leap on Ross's side of the table. But I think more than that, Reid right now is thinking about how can I end this game in the final 5 turns. So this is turn 1 of extra turns. So Reid will have turn 1, Ross turn 2, Reid turn 3, Ross turn 4, and then Reid a final turn 5. So Reid has this turn plus 2 more to try to end the game. And, Ross has those turns to, either stall things out if that's the way he wants to play the game, or show Reid that, hey, I have a chance to win this game as well by getting some card advantage and starting to loop things from my graveyard.
All right, so this is 4 damage here from Dragonlord Silumgar. He did take out the Thopter, and he's just passing the turn with all of his mana available here. Fathom Feeder's up if he wants to activate that. He's got Ugin on 6. I mean, he kills him in the 2 requisite turns as the board sits.
Comes Ojutai's command, sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to counter that and draw a card.
Counter draw has been called by Reid, but it looks like there may be a response here from Ross. Is it Stasis Snare?
It looks like it's Stasis Snare.
Stasis Snare in response. That's the last card in your hand? Yep.
Does Reid have an answer for Stasis Snare?
He has a dig through time.
Target Silumgar.
Oh, man.
This rolls.
Draw a card. Now, that was Reid's main source of damage. That was 4 flying damage in the air per turn that Ross just took care of.
You can go.
And like we've noted, it does still feel like Reid has turned the corner here, but can he actually close the door on the match here? This is end step.
Yeah.
On the second turn of turns, which was Ross Merriam's turn. Reid has enough mana to activate Fathom Feeder here as well.
So, thinking about Reid's possible paths to end the game.
Wow, pitches dig through time.
Interesting. On this next turn, he'll get a plus out of Ugin for 3 damage.
And Murderous Cut, Hangerback Walker.
Oh, okay. Looks like a Murderous Cut and Hangerback Walker. Sacrificing to Evolutionary Leap, probably?
Yeah, he put a counter on it, and then he's going to sacrifice it as well.
Or does he have enough? Yeah, he does have enough mana.
Yeah, just enough. And he's going to find a Warden of the First Tree here.
So I think what Reid's trying to set up here is actually a Planar Awakening, or sorry, Planar Outburst with Awaken.
Oh.
Which will give him a 5/5 land creature.
You see how he put that polluted delta out front? I think you're right.
And that will let him get in for 5, sort of 8 damage this turn.
Actually, even more. No, you're right. Just
I think just 8.
You're right.
With
Sorry.
the 5-power land plus the Ugin. And that drops Ross Merriam to 3 with an Ugin in play. So assuming Ross can't find a way to gain life this turn or answer Ugin, Reid will be able to win on his next turn.
Wow, he might be able to gain life. I think he just drew Mastery of the Unseen off the top.
So he'll have to pay 2 mana plus 4 to make a manifest. And if that manifest is exactly Hangerback Walker or Warden of the First Tree, he can... Oh, no. It has to be Warden of the First Tree because the Hangerback Walker will be dead by the time the trigger resolves. So he needs exactly his 3rd or 4th Warden of the First Tree off of this manifest to survive this turn, I think.
And if not, then the match goes to Reid.
I believe that is the case because this is turn 4 of turns, so Reid still has 1 more turn to try to win. Actually, don't forget, there is also the Polluted Delta, which could attack. So Jace could flash back a removal spell, for example.
Oh, that's a good point. Does he have... He has a Murderous Cut sitting in his yard?
Yeah, so I don't think I see a way to get out of this for Ross. So what Reid needs to do to be totally sure, I think, is activate... Oh, no, I think this works.
And that does it. Reid Duke wins the match. What a crazy match that was.
That was a crazy match.
Super complex board states, a whole lot of interactions going there. That's kind of standard at its finest there. Control deck versus more aggressive-ish mid-range deck there. And Reid Duke emerges victorious. Whew. That was a tough one.
Yeah, I like that match a lot. I like the sort of the flavor of that match where it's a green-white creature deck versus a blue control deck, but it's not just like the control deck wraths once and then counters all the spells for the rest of the game. It's actually a back and forth between them going deep into the game there. It was very cool.
Yeah, that was sweet. And there were so many intricate interactions there, too, that you really have to know, if you want to play at this level for Standard. We can send it now? All right, let's send it to the news desk and Richard Hagan.
Wouldn't you just love to hear Ian Duke say, I really enjoyed the flavour of that match where my brother won, go Reid, go Reid. Not kind of that guy, really. Just far too nice, Ian Duke, but great job by Reid. He goes to 6-1. Other 6-1s. Martin Muller pulls out a win over Patrick Chapin, the innovator, 5-1 now. John Stern against Sean McLaren. What a clash of the Canadians that was. John Stern wins 6-1. Someone we haven't mentioned, Javier Dominguez of Spain, playtest partner of Antonio Del Moral Leon, Pro Tour champion in the last season, of course. He defeated Oliver Polak-Rotman, who now falls to 5-2 after a 5-0 start. Magnus Lanto, Magic Online champion, is 6-1. Ryoichi Tamada of Japan, in his 10th Pro Tour, is 6-1. And so is Matej Zatlkai. Wait a second, Matej Zatlkai, he always does really good deck techs. We should do one of those. Let's do that.